Hey y'all, it's East Texas Thermal Hunter coming here to talk about calling for hogs while out hog hunting. A lot of times I get asked a lot of questions about how I hog hunt, and when I talk about calling for hogs, I get people that are always wondering how I do it, does it work? So I'm going to talk about that in this video, and then we're going to be discussing the following topics, as well as show you some hog calling footage. We're going to be talking about, does it work? How do I do it and what works best? What kind of sounds do I use? Does it scare the hogs away? And kind of how do I make a setup and how do I make a stand when I'm calling for hogs? So first question we're going to talk about today is, does calling hogs work? So the short answer to that question is yeah, it does. Calling hogs with a caller will work on bringing them to you. And what do I mean, like, does it work? Basically, calling hogs works by getting hogs to react to a sound that triggers the animal to react to their natural instincts, whether that's protection or aggression to come protect something, their area, their hogs, their sounders, their offspring, whatever it may be. So basically what you're doing is you're trying to get them to react on a natural instinct to come investigate that sound. And by doing that, you're placing that sound in a location to where the hogs will present themselves to you so that you have a shot opportunity. So whether that may be you have a hog that's on a property that you don't have access to, whether it's on a property or whether it's on, they're in a location that you don't have, that you can't make a safe shot at, or whether you saw them go into, you see them and they're gone and you're trying to get them to come back so you can present yourself with a shot opportunity. Calling hogs is very similar to than calling like predators, whether it's coyotes or bobcats. You're basically calling that animal to get them to come to a location or present themselves so that you can see them or get into a location where you can make a safe shot. It doesn't work all the time. In fact, there's a couple things that have to happen for it to be more successful, and we'll discuss those in the next section, which is called What Works Best for Me When Calling Hogs.
One, two.
Next question is, what works best for me while calling hogs? Well, there's a few things that can help making your stands, calling hogs more successful. First is there has to be hogs in the area. If you're calling to a property that has no hogs and there's no hogs in the area, calling is not going to bring hogs magically to the sound and get you a shot opportunity. The second thing is always helpful to have dominant hogs in the area or in the group or in the sounder that you're calling to, or whether it's a lone boar or a lone sow or whatever it may be. Having a dominant hog tends to get you a better reaction. They tend to respond to that call better. They tend to come investigate that sound. They tend to come, whatever it may be. If it's aggressive sound, they'll come in and try to be ready to fight. If it's a protective distress call, they'll try to come protect what they think is a pig in distress or their piglets. Or if it's just trying to group up to find locating other sounders, other pigs, they'll come in looking. So having dominant pigs in a group generally will get you a better reaction. I have called to sounders that don't have any dominant, pigs or hogs in there, and I generally don't get nearly as good as a reaction of them coming to the caller as I do when there's a dominant pig. Generally, if you've got a bunch of shoats where there's no dominant, young pigs, or there's no dominant pigs in that group, most times I don't have a lot of success. Generally speaking, they'll either run away or they won't even pay attention to the caller. Another thing is calling to areas or properties that you don't put a lot of pressure on. I have a lot of properties that I hunt them quite frequently. So having getting successful calls where I get pigs that come in gets less frequent the more I call. So having pigs that aren't pressured, having areas that aren't pressured, that'll help you be more successful. Whenever I get opportunities to go to a new property and call in a new location that I know that they haven't been called or they haven't been pressured, I generally get better success rates of calling them in to the caller. Just like coyotes, you call coyotes over and over and over, they learn, they're not going to come to a caller. So keep in mind that high pressured areas probably won't be as successful. They could, just depends, but most times you have better success rates on calling hogs on properties and with hogs that haven't been called very often.
Yep, 1, 2, 3.
So I get this is another question I get asked quite a bit. Does calling to hogs scare the hogs away? When you throw a caller out there, does it cause them to come towards you? What is it the reaction normally get? And most people that have never been out with me or have never been with anyone that's called hogs, the first question is, that I normally get or they get asked, or does calling hogs scare them away? So I have to say, yes, it can scare hogs away, but it can bring them to you. So it's a catch-22. So me and my hunting buddy, Hans, Texas, we have a rule that if we see hogs and we can get to them, we have access to the place they're on, it's a safe way to shoot, we'll put a spot and stock on them and get as close as we can before we take a shot at them. We will not call them. The reason being that is we don't want to risk calling to them and actually scaring them away instead of bringing them to us when we have access to get to them. So generally speaking, the three reactions that happens when we throw a caller out for calling hogs is one of three things. First, they're either going to run to you. Second, they're either going to run away from the caller. Or third, which is the less common, is they're just going to ignore it altogether and continue about their business. Generally speaking, when that happens, that they don't respond, it's either a bunch of young pigs that don't have a dominant figure like I talked about earlier, or they don't hear your call, or they don't, honestly, sometimes they just don't care. But that's probably the less frequent response. Generally speaking, you either get them to run to the call or run away from the call.
Right here. Ready? Oh shit. Ready? 1, 2.
Another question I get asked all the time is, what types of sounds do I use when I'm calling for hogs? And that's a pretty good question. So I use the Convergent Solutions Bullet HP collar. It's an electronic collar, and I use the app that goes with it, which is the Hog Pro app. You can get it on the Apple Store as well as the Google Play Store for Android. And then I use a lot of the Byron South sounds that are on that app. It's got a lot of great sounds on it. I use pretty much that exclusively when I'm calling. I've used it for the last few years, and it's pretty much in every hunting bag or anywhere I go, it goes with me. There's two types of calls that I kind of generally talk about and how I use them. I got non-aggressive calls and aggressive calls. And again, all these calls are in the app. So for non-aggressive calls, I'm going to call out some of my favorites. So if I'm calling over a property that's got feeders or that are feeding year round, and I know that I've seen pigs out there rooting around and eating off of deer feeders or food plots, things like that, I will start with either hog feeding 1, hog group feeding, or chow time. Those three calls I really kind of start with. I start my stand and use those while I'm in a location where I know that they've got feeders or that I've seen pigs openly grazing. They're very non-aggressive. They're a good way to start your stands. I've gotten really good reactions with chow time, and I feel like when you call an area, just going in there and just turn on a call real loud, it doesn't sound realistic. But having like a sound that sounds like there's a group of pigs in the area kind of rooting around, grazing, eating, they tend to kind of pull out the pigs. The pigs will come investigate and see, oh, there's other pigs in the area. I want to see what's going on. So I typically use those in that type of a circumstance. The next two I consider non-aggressive. They're called the Rally and Vampigra. I have had a high success rate with using both of these calls. I use the rally and Van Pigra in almost every stand I make, no matter where I'm calling, whether I'm calling in a deer lease or whether I'm calling in the woods or in lowlands or in bottoms, it doesn't matter. I love these calls. I've gotten a lot of good success from having pigs come straight to the collar. And in fact, we were calling one night with the rally, and I had a group of pigs run my collar over and destroy my collar before we could get the whole group out of the woods to start shooting. I mean, they came all the way to the collar and just destroyed it. You don't have that happen all the time, but man, when it comes, it is exhilarating. Seeing those hogs chomping their mouths, stomping on the ground, ready to come up and see what's going on. I mean, they destroyed my collar, and it was a really cool night. It was fun, it was exhilarating, but that's what calling's all about. And I use the rally and Van Pigra in pretty much every one of my stands. Now for aggressive calls, I use the sow hysteria, I use boar magnet, and I use total chaos. If I see a lone boar out by himself rooting around, or I see one on another property, I will almost always use boar magnet. It works great on getting boars to come in. It's aggressive call, so it's basically like a territorial call, or a protection call, not a protection, but an aggressive call where they're gonna hear that other boar, that boar sound that I'm calling with, and if that boar is territorial or wants to see what's going on, they'll come in ready to fight. I mean, they'll be chomping their teeth and ready to dripping from the mouth, ready to see what other boars in that area that they're about to fight. Generally gets very good reactions with lone boars. So same with total chaos. Total chaos I use when I see boars quite a bit. Those two are my boar calls. I use them quite a bit. Sow hysteria, it's just an all-around great call. I use that call. I end every stand that I make with sow hysteria. And it's kind of like a one for all call. Sometimes I just throw it out there as loud as it can go. Sometimes I just keep it at 25% volume. I've called coyotes in with this, called bobcats in with this. I wouldn't say you would try that all the time, but there's a lot of animals that react to this call. Lots of groups of pigs have come in on this call. It's a very good call to use. So that kind of sums up like what kind of sounds I use, how I use them. They're all on the Hog Pro app. You can get that on the App Store. Highly recommend the Convergent Bullet for an electronic collar. Like I said, it's in my hunting bag everywhere I go. I use it on every stand. Every time I go hunt a property, every time I go hog hunting, it's with me.
You got the front one. You on front one? Oh, okay. Yep. Ready? 1, 2.
Another question I get asked is how I go about making a stand and how I set up my collar when I'm calling for hogs. So the first thing I do is I set that collar out about 25, 30 yards in front of me, and I point that collar to where I think the hogs are either going to be coming from or where I've seen them last. So if I get to a property and they go into the woods, or I see them on a property they don't have access to and I want them to draw them towards me, I'm going to set that collar and point that to where the sound is going to be towards them. Now, the other thing I do is when I set that collar out 25 to 30 yards in front of me, I don't sit directly in line with where I think they're going to come from. The reason being is they run to that call and they're looking at that sound, trying to figure out where they are. They're going to be looking around. If you're sitting right in line where they're running, they have a better opportunity of seeing you and busting you essentially and going the other way and not coming to that call. The other thing too is that when a hog is running straight at you, your target area is smaller, right? You've got to shoot them right in the head or under the neck or right between the shoulders, right between the chest of their front plates. That doesn't give a lot of shot opportunities. So if you sit off-centered the way I do, I like to sit off a little bit off-centered. So as they're running, if the call's out in front of me and I'm sitting over here, as they're running towards that call, I've got more shot opportunities on them. I got more body to shoot at as they run into that call, as well as they're not looking right at me. So if you start shooting, they're not likely to run towards you or see you before you shoot and run the other way. The other thing that I do is make sure that I have the wind right. I want to make sure that, I'm setting that collar. I'm trying to call when I can I'm calling into the wind, and I'm setting with the wind in my face, so that as they come to that call, they don't get my wind before they get to the call and turn around and take off the other way. So those are a couple things I do about placement and how I set up. The other thing I do is when I start my calling, I start the call, but I have the volume at 0, and I slowly increase that volume to about 25% for the first probably 5 minutes of my stand. And the reason being is if you just go there and turn your call on as loud as possible, it'll work sometimes, it won't work sometimes. I used to do it, but what I think is that animals don't just like automatically they're there and automatically, or they're not there and all of a sudden they're screaming really loud, right? The way I view it is if I slowly increase that volume, it kind of sounds like they're slowly getting that sound. They're slowly getting closer to those animals that hogs that they're coming to, right? Sounds more natural. That's just my personal opinion. May not be true, but that's how I do it. And then after about 5 minutes, I slowly increase the volume at 5-minute increments until my stand is over. The other thing that I do is each of my stands are generally between 15 and 30 minutes. No less than 15 minutes, and sometimes they go longer than 30 minutes, but most times it's between 15 and 30 minutes of calling hogs. And I normally work from non-aggressive calls for the first 5 to 10 minutes, then transition over to some, aggressive type calls. But I really try to, stick with the rally, the Van Pigger in that middle section of the call. And then I end with either a boar magnet call or a sow hysteria, almost always in my stands with that. I've gotten a lot of good reactions. And whether it may be a coyote running in to check out what's going on, that's happened a lot of times. But I generally end my stands with that sound, and I generally will call 15 and 30 minutes, and then I'll make a move, whether that's to another place on the property a couple hundred yards away, or that's just moving the property altogether and going to another place. If I'm only hunting one place and it's a pretty big place, and I know that they're in that area and I know it's a good location, I might make a stand longer than 30 minutes, but generally speaking, I don't call longer than 30 minutes in one area.
I got this front one. You tell me when. Ready? 1, 2. I'm ready. Ready? 1, 2.
Hopefully this video has answered some of your questions you might have had about calling hogs and how I do it, how you can do it. I also hope you enjoyed some of the footage from my thermal hunts about calling hogs into my collar. If you're interested in picking up one of these Convergent collars, or if you want to know where you can get the app, I'll post a link to the Outdoor Legacy Gears page. You can get it from there. I'll also post a link for the App Store and the Android or the Google Play Store for Android, so you can download the Hog Pro app. Like I said, highly recommend both of those products. I use them every time I go out hog hunting. But I'll post those. If you're interested in getting the collar, you can go to Outdoor Legacy Gears webpage. That's outdoorlegacygear.com, or you can call Hans or Jason and they can help get you one on the way. Again, thanks for watching my videos. Please like this video. Please check me out on my YouTube channel at ETX Thermal Hunter. Subscribe and like to my videos. And I'm also on Instagram at ETX Thermal Hunter. Please go check me out there and like my videos and like my pictures. I really appreciate all the time y'all do watching my videos. Hopefully this video is helpful. Please stay safe in the field and God bless. Thanks.